Hello and welcome to the MCQ lecture series. In today's class, I'll be dealing with some of the important multiple choice questions with respect to macroeconomics. In this lecture, I'll be dealing with some of the questions from classical theory of employment. So let's get started. The first question is, the classical economists believed that in a free market economy, there is always a tendency towards establishment of dash, or establishment of what? Establishment of A, full employment, establishment of B, a market, establishment of full unemployment, and D, none of the above. So here, if we look at the classical belief, or what the classical economists believed, if at all there is a free market economy, there is always a tendency towards establishment of near full employment or full employment, and therefore here option A is the correct answer, which suggests that there's an establishment of full employment, or a tendency of establishment of full employment according to the classical belief. So I hope the first question is pretty much clear. Let us now move to the next question, which is, dash theory asserts that level of income and employment, dash theory asserts that the levels of income and employment are governed by fixed capital stock on one hand and wage good fund on the other. Which theory suggests this? That the levels of income and employment are governed by fixed capital stock on one hand and the wage good fund on the other. Whether it is Keynesian, whether it is monetarist theory, whether it is classical theory, or none of the above. So here the correct answer is classical theory. So here classical theory asserts that the levels of income and employment are governed by the fixed capital stock on one hand and the wage good fund on the other hand. So I hope this question is pretty much clear. Let us now move to the next question. The next question is, the classical theory of employment is based on dash. On what basis the classical theory is looking at employment and income per se? So here the underlying options are A, law of demand, B, law of supply, C, Say's law of market, and D, none of the above. So here the classical theory of employment is based upon the Say's law of market, and therefore option C is the correct answer to this particular question. I'll talk about what Say's law of market is in the next question, which is in relation to the statement of Say's law of market or interpretation of Say's law of market. And the question is like this: according to the Say's law of market, every supply creates dash. So according to the Say's law of market, every supply creates its A, own demand, its own price, its own USP, and none of the above. So here, according to the Say's law of market, every supply creates its own demand, and therefore option A is the correct answer. And on the basis of this very law, the classical theory of employment is based. So therefore Say's law of market suggests that every supply creates its own demand. I hope this question is pretty much clear. Let us now move to the next question, which is talking about what is true with respect to Say's law of market. This is very important law, that is why I am giving you more questions towards the same. Let us look at what are the underlying options available to us. The question is in this fashion: what is true with respect to Say's law of market? And the underlying options are: first is every supply creates its own demand. Second option is no problem of lack of demand. Since every supply is creating its own demand, so there is no problem of lack of demand per se, or there is no demand deficiency. Then the third problem is the third point is no possibility of overproduction, because whatever supply I am generating, it is automatically, according to the Say's law of market, creating its own demand, and therefore there is no possibility of overproduction at all. And the last is all of the above. So here all these three statements, that is every supply creates its own demand, there is no problem of lack of demand, as well as there is no possibility of overproduction, are true with respect to Say's law of market. So the answer here is all of the above. I hope it is making sense to you when I am talking about all these three important points associated with Say's law of market per se. I hope this is clear. Let us now move to the next question, which is talking about the assumptions of classical theory of employment, and the underlying options are, or the question is framed in this fashion: the assumptions of classical theory of employment are dash. And the first assumption is existence of full employment. The first question, I hope you can relate to this: existence of full employment. Second is laissez-faire economy. Laissez-faire economy means that there is least government intervention. That means government doesn't have to intervene. The market system will automatically achieve equilibrium, disequilibrium. If at all there are any disequilibrium, automatically the market will adjust to it and an equilibrium will be achieved. There is no need of government's intervention. That means laissez-faire economy. The third is perfect competition in both labor as well as commodity market, and fourth option is all of the above. So here when we look at the assumptions of classical theory of employment, here all these three things, that is every supply the existence of full employment, then we have laissez-faire economy or least government intervention, and third is there's perfect competition in both labor as well as commodity market, and therefore option D, that is all of the above, is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to the next question, which is again a repetition sort of a question, which is talking about the assumptions of classical theory of employment. All these assumptions are important, that is why we are going to cover it with respect to 2 questions. But anyways, let us look at the question here. The assumptions of classical theory of employment are dash. Let us look at the underlying options. First is wages and prices are flexible, that is the assumption. Second is no deficiency of demand. I told you it is based upon Say's law of market, which says that every supply creates its own demand. So therefore there is no deficiency of demand. Whenever there is a supply, it will automatically create its own demand, and therefore there is no demand deficiency. Then third is no change in capital as well as technological knowledge, capital stock as well as technological knowledge in the shorter run, and all of the above. So these are again all the 3 important assumptions of classical theory of employment, wherein there is wage price flexibility, there is no demand efficiency, and third is there is no change in capital stock and technological knowledge in the shorter run, and therefore all of the above is the correct answer. Now we know there are 6 assumptions to the classical model. The first was existence of full employment, second was laissez-faire economy, third was perfect competition in labor and commodity market, fourth is wage price flexibility, fifth is no deficiency of demand, and sixth is in the shorter run both the knowledge as well as technological or the technological knowledge as well as the capital stock remains constant, and therefore these are some of the important assumptions on which the classical model is based. Therefore for this question the underlying option is all of the above, and these were the 6 important assumptions of the classical model. I hope both these questions suffice the need for the questions based on assumptions of classical model per se. Let us now move to the next question, which is talking about according to the classical theory of employment, income is spent partly on dash and dash. According to the classical model, income is spent on what? So here let us look at the underlying options which are available to us. First is people and government, second is consumption and investment, third is investment and government, and fourth is none of the above. So here when we look at the classical model, it is the income Y is spent on C plus I, that means consumption and investment. So therefore option B, consumption and investment, is the correct answer. That means according to the classical theory, income is partly spent on consumption and partly on investment. So the second option relates to the same, and therefore the option which is correct is income is spent partly on consumption and partly on investment. I hope this question is pretty much clear. Let us now move to the next question, which is talking about according to the classical economists, it is dash that brings about equality between savings and investment. According to the classical economist, it is dash that brings about equality between savings and investment. How savings and investment will become equal? First option is changes in rate of interest, second is change in taste and preferences, third is change in the weather, and fourth is none of the above. So here according to the classical economists, there is one possibility when savings and investment can become equal, and that is when there are changes in rate of interest. Let us assume that when there is an increase in savings, what will happen is the rate of interest will start going down. When there is a lot of increase in savings, people are saving more and more, as a result there is more money coming towards bank, and as a result the rate of interest is going to go down, and as a result of interest going down there will be demand for investment, because what will happen is the rate of interest which because the banks will have a lot of funds with them, and the major banking business is to lend, and as a result, at lower rate of interest, there will be more demand for investment. More people will come who are deficit spenders to take loans or money from the banks per se, and as a result, the classical economists believe that there will be equality in investment and saving, and therefore, according to the classical economist, it is the changes in rate of interest that bring about equality between saving and investment per se. So I hope this question is pretty much clear. This increased saving resulted into increased demand for investment, and as a result there is an equality between the two which is reached according to the classical economist, only and only because of there is the underlying change in rate of interest. Here the rate of interest fell down, and as a result of that this cycle could complete. So this is what the classical economists argue per se. I hope this question is pretty much clear. Let us now move to the last question in this segment, which is in relation to again the classical theory. And according to the classical theory, the demand for labor, please mind you, here I am asking about demand for labor is a function of what? Is a function of what? Demand for labor is a function of what according to the classical model? Whether it is a function of wage rate, whether it is a function of money supply, whether it is a function of savings or investment. Let us understand this question with the help of this graph. Okay, here we are looking at, according to the classical economists, demand for labor is a function of what? That means demand for labor depends upon what? And here let us look at this graph. On the x-axis I am looking at the quantity of labor, on y-axis I am looking at wage. Okay, this is the supply curve, SS is the supply curve of labor, and DD is the demand curve of labor. At this point I am reaching equilibrium. That means at the point where the demand curve and supply curve for labor intersects, that is my equilibrium. Let us assume that equilibrium rate of wage is W. Now when there is an increase in wage, from OW to OW1, this was the equilibrium wage rate. When the wage rate increases to OW1, the demand for labor is given by W1A. So at OW1 wage rate, the demand for labor is equal to this. This is the demand. This is the demand curve, and the demand is this much, W1A, and the supply of labor is, this is the supply of labor. That means W1B. And we can see here that this distance W1A is less than this distance W1B. That means whenever the wage rate is higher than the equilibrium wage rate, the demand for labor is less and the supply of labor is more. That means it is showing a functional relationship with respect to the demand for labor is showing a functional relationship with respect to wage. On the contrary, when the wage rate falls to OW2, at this point at OW2, now this is the wage rate at OW2, the demand for labor is this much, W2, the demand for labor is this much, W2Q. Okay, demand is W2Q and the supply here is less, here W2P is the supply. Now we can see at lower wage rate the supply of labor is less and the demand is more. That means when the wage rate falls, the demand for labor is higher but the supply of labor is less. That means whenever the wage rate increases, the supply of labor increases, and when the wage rate falls, the supply of labor falls. That means there is a functional relationship between demand for labor and the underlying wage rate which is going on in the market per se. So therefore, according to the classical economists, demand for labor is a function of wage rate in the market. So therefore, wage rate is the correct answer. This graph was to explain you how when the wage rate is less, the demand is more of labor but the supply is less, and when the wage rate is high, the demand is less but the supply is more. So this is how you can look at the classical theory and the demand for labor as a function of wage rate per se. Yeah, so I hope these 10 questions will give you an idea of how the classical model behaves. In the next class, I'll talk about the Keynesian model. So please stay tuned for more. Thank you.